Picture this. There's something in your kitchen right now that you pass by every morning without thinking twice. Yet hidden inside it are compounds your hair follicles are actively looking for, nutrients your body once relied on to maintain deep, natural hair pigment. And what if the growing number of gray strands you notice isn't purely a consequence of age or genetics, but in many cases linked to specific nutritional shortages that can actually be corrected? That idea might sound exaggerated at first, but the research suggests it's not. Premature graying is not always a fixed, irreversible process. For a significant number of people, it acts more like a warning sign, a visible indicator that the pigment producing cells in the hair follicles are not getting the resources they need to function properly. When those missing nutrients are restored, those same cells can, in certain documented cases, resume pigment production again. Over the next several minutes, I'm going to walk you through 6 everyday foods that contain key nutrients your melanocytes depend on. I'll also break down why modern medical discussions often overlook nutrition when it comes to hair color, and how you can actually consume these foods in a way that improves nutrient delivery to the cells that matter most. For years, while working with people dealing with early or rapid graying, a pattern kept showing up again and again. It wasn't simply genetics, it was a consistent set of nutritional deficiencies that had never been properly connected or explained to them. Today, I'm connecting those dots for you. Before we go further, leave a comment with your age and the age when you first started noticing gray hairs. That context matters, because what I'm about to explain doesn't apply the same way to everyone. If graying began earlier, like in your 30s, nutritional factors are more likely to be playing a meaningful role, and that makes the situation more responsive to change. And if you've noticed your gray hair increasing more quickly during stressful periods or after being sick, add the word faster as well. That pattern often reflects a specific biological response, and you'll understand why shortly. Here's what happens in many households. Someone in their early 40s spots a few gray hairs near the temples. They mention it during a routine doctor visit. The response is quick. It's just genetics. And the conversation moves on. They return home, maybe start looking into hair dye, and slowly accept the idea that this is simply how aging works for them. But in that brief visit, something important was missed. No one checked vitamin B12 levels. No one considered copper intake. No one evaluated whether the follicle cells were nutritionally supported. The entire discussion lasted less than a minute, and the explanation was reduced to heredity. However, research paints a more complex picture. A 2016 study published in the International Journal of Trichology looked at younger individuals experiencing premature graying and found something notable. Levels of ferritin, vitamin D, vitamin B12, and copper were significantly lower compared to people without graying. These weren't elderly participants reaching a natural stage of life. These were young adults with measurable, identifiable, and potentially correctable deficiencies. This mismatch between scientific findings and routine clinical conversations means many people lose their natural hair color years earlier than they might have otherwise. This discussion is meant to bridge that gap. If you're someone who prefers to understand the reasoning behind health information rather than just following instructions, what comes next will give you a completely new way to think about hair pigmentation. Inside every hair follicle are specialized cells called melanocytes. Their job is simple but essential. They produce melanin, the pigment responsible for your hair color. Each time a new hair strand forms, these cells inject melanin into the developing fiber. The final color depends entirely on how much pigment is produced during that process. You can think of it like a production system that relies on a steady supply chain. As long as the necessary inputs arrive on time, everything runs smoothly. But if even one critical nutrient is missing, production slows down. If several are missing at once, the system begins to shut down. What you see externally is gray hair, not a broken system, but one that's under-resourced. One of the key enzymes involved in pigment production is tyrosinase. This enzyme is directly dependent on copper to function. Copper isn't just helpful in this process, it is structurally essential. Without it, tyrosinase cannot properly convert tyrosine into melanin. When copper levels drop too low, pigment production declines sharply. Another factor is oxidative stress. Melanocytes are highly active cells, meaning they produce and consume energy at a fast rate. If the body lacks sufficient antioxidants, such as selenium or vitamin E, damage from free radicals begins to build up. Over time, this stress accelerates aging in these cells, reduces their pigment output, and eventually can cause them to stop functioning effectively. A third major influence involves circulation, which determines how efficiently nutrients actually reach the follicle environment in the first place. Your follicles receive nutrients through the bloodstream, which feeds the dermal papilla at the base of each hair. When circulation is reduced, whether due to inflammation or low iron levels, the melanocytes inside the follicle don't get enough of the key building blocks they rely on, including tyrosine and B vitamins. Even if your diet contains them, poor delivery means they simply never reach the target. In other words, the breakdown can happen at the level of transport, long before nutrition ever becomes useful. These aren't minor details. They're the core biological switches that determine whether melanocytes stay active and productive or gradually slow down and shut off. Every food in this list is chosen because it supports at least one of these systems directly. Starting with number 6, a food most people completely overlook: blackstrap molasses. It's the thick, dark syrup left behind after sugarcane juice has been fully refined. Many people have never bought it and have no idea what it actually offers. In just 1 tablespoon, you get roughly 0.7 milligauss of copper, close to 70% of the daily requirement in a single serving. That matters because copper is essential for tyrosinase, the enzyme that drives melanin production. Without enough copper, that enzyme can't function properly, and pigment production slows down dramatically. Beyond copper, blackstrap molasses also contains iron, manganese, and B vitamins that help support the metabolic environment your follicles depend on. It's essentially a concentrated remnant of nutrients that modern food processing tends to strip away from the diet. A simple way to use it is 1 tablespoon per day, stirred into oatmeal or blended into a smoothie. The key here is consistency. Restoring copper levels is not something that reflects changes overnight. It takes time for nutrients to build back up at the follicle level, so this is about steady support rather than quick results. It's also important not to confuse blackstrap molasses with lighter molasses or golden syrup. Those versions go through fewer processing stages and contain far fewer minerals. The deep, dark blackstrap variety is where the nutritional density actually comes from. Number 5 is something most people already recognize as healthy, but rarely connect to hair pigmentation: dark leafy greens like spinach, kale, Swiss chard, and arugula. Their key value lies in folate, or vitamin B9. Folate doesn't directly create melanin, but it is crucial for maintaining the cells that do. Melanocytes are constantly renewing cells, and they depend on proper DNA synthesis and cell division to stay functional. When folate levels drop, that renewal process slows. Older melanocytes die off, and fewer new ones are created to replace them, gradually reducing the overall pigment-producing capacity of the follicle. Leafy greens also provide iron, and when paired with vitamin C, iron absorption can increase significantly. That improved iron availability supports oxygen delivery through the blood, which in turn helps maintain a healthier follicle environment. Better oxygenation means better cellular performance overall. One important detail often missed is preparation. Boiling leafy greens can destroy more than half of their folate content. A better approach is to eat them raw or lightly steamed. If you cook them, keep it brief and low heat, ideally under a few minutes, and add something like lemon juice to boost iron absorption. What you combine foods with can be just as important as the foods themselves. Number 4 focuses on selenium, a mineral most people rarely associate with hair health. Sunflower seeds are one of the easiest and most accessible sources of selenium in a normal diet. 1 ounce provides around 22 micrograms, which is roughly 40% of the daily requirement. Selenium plays a central role in antioxidant defense inside melanocytes. It is part of enzymes like glutathione peroxidase, which protect cells from oxidative damage during pigment production. When selenium is low, this protective system weakens, oxidative stress builds up, and melanocytes begin to age and lose function more quickly. You can think of selenium as part of the internal maintenance system of the follicle. Even if copper is available and circulation is strong, without proper cellular protection, damage accumulates faster than repair can keep up. Sunflower seeds also contain vitamin E, which works alongside selenium in this antioxidant network, offering another layer of cellular protection. A small handful daily is enough. It's best to eat them raw and unsalted for maximum benefit. One caution, avoid pairing them with coffee or strong tea, since tannins in those drinks can bind to minerals and reduce absorption. Number 3 addresses a factor that is often ignored in discussions about gray hair, chronic inflammation in and around the scalp. Over time, this low-level inflammation quietly damages melanocyte function. Fatty fish such as salmon, mackerel, and sardines are among the most powerful anti-inflammatory foods available. Their omega-3 fatty acids, EPA and DHA, help reduce inflammatory signaling in tissues throughout the body, including hair follicles. A 2022 review in Nutrients found that omega-3 intake can significantly reduce markers of inflammation across multiple systems. This includes environments relevant to follicle health. But fatty fish offer more than just omega-3s. They are also one of the best natural sources of vitamin D. A typical serving of wild salmon can provide between 600 and 1,000 IU of vitamin D3. Hair follicles actually contain vitamin D receptors, and when these are properly activated, they help regulate normal hair cycling. Disruption in this cycle can contribute to gradual loss of pigment-producing function. Fatty fish also supply vitamin B12 and high-quality protein. B12 deficiency becomes more common with age and can be worsened by certain medications, and it directly affects cellular energy systems tied to melanocyte activity. A practical target is 2 to 3 servings per week, preferably wild-caught when possible, since nutrient density, especially omega-3 and vitamin D, is generally higher compared to farmed fish. Number 2 is one of the most direct foods for pigment production: chickpeas. The reason they matter so much comes down to a single amino acid: tyrosine. Melanin production starts with tyrosine. This is the raw material that gets converted into pigment through enzymatic activity. The enzyme tyrosinase depends on this process, but without enough tyrosine available, the system slows down regardless of enzyme function. In simple terms, the machinery is working, but the input line is empty. Chickpeas are a strong plant-based source of tyrosine. They also contain vitamin B6, which helps the body properly metabolize amino acids, meaning it improves how efficiently tyrosine is used. On top of that, they provide folate and iron, both of which support the broader follicle environment and red blood cell function. In many traditional diets, where legumes are a daily staple, such as Mediterranean, Middle Eastern, and South Asian eating patterns, people tend to retain natural hair pigmentation longer into life compared to diets low in legumes. While many factors are involved, the nutrient profile of foods like chickpeas offers a clear biological explanation for part of that pattern. Half a cup of cooked chickpeas per day can provide a meaningful dose of tyrosine along with supporting nutrients. They're easy to add into meals, whether blended into hummus, tossed into salads, or roasted as a snack. The main limitation isn't availability, it's consistency of habit. Finally, number 1 is often the most surprising: dark chocolate with at least 70% cacao. What makes it stand out isn't a single nutrient, but the combination. High-quality dark chocolate provides copper, iron, magnesium, zinc, and a strong dose of flavonoid antioxidants in one food. These flavonoids improve endothelial function, which is the health of the inner lining of blood vessels. When that function improves, blood vessels relax more efficiently, circulation increases, and nutrient delivery to peripheral tissues, including hair follicles, becomes more effective. Better circulation means more reliable delivery of the nutrients melanocytes depend on, and when that delivery system improves, the follicle environment becomes significantly more supportive for pigment production. A 2015 study published in the British Journal of Nutrition showed that consistent intake of high flavonol cocoa over a 12-week period led to measurable improvements in skin blood flow and oxygen delivery to surface tissues compared with a low flavonol control group. When circulation improves at that level, it naturally supports better nutrient delivery to the follicles. And when follicles receive a stronger supply of oxygen and nutrients, melanocytes have more of what they need to maintain pigment production. This is where dark chocolate becomes more than just another food on the list. The copper content contributes directly to tyrosinase activity, the enzyme responsible for melanin synthesis. At the same time, its flavonoids help protect melanocytes from oxidative stress, reducing cellular damage over time. and the improved circulation enhances the delivery of every other nutrient discussed earlier, whether it comes from chickpeas, leafy greens, or blackstrap molasses, ensuring those compounds actually reach the follicle environment where they matter most. In that sense, dark chocolate doesn't just provide individual benefits on its own. It supports the entire system by improving how efficiently nutrients are transported and used. A practical intake is 1 to 2 small squares per day, roughly 20 to 30 grams of 70% cacao or higher chocolate. The ingredient list should be simple, primarily cacao, cacao butter, and minimal added sugar. When the formulation becomes overly complex, the concentration of beneficial compounds is usually lower due to processing. It's also best not to consume it with dairy in the same sitting. Milk proteins can bind to flavonoids and significantly reduce their absorption. It works better on its own or paired with something light like a small handful of sunflower seeds from earlier in the list. One important point needs to be clear, because it's more important than any individual food recommendation. None of this produces immediate results. Hair grows at an average rate of about half an inch per month. Even if melanocyte activity begins improving right away, visible changes only appear in new hair growth, which takes time to emerge. Realistically, you're looking at a minimum of 3 to 6 months of consistent dietary and lifestyle changes before any meaningful visual shift can be evaluated. That delay isn't a limitation of the approach. It's simply how hair biology works. The people who do notice changes, such as darker new growth or a slower appearance of new gray strands, are almost always those who stay consistent long enough for the full growth cycle to unfold. One factor that is consistently underestimated in discussions about graying hair is stress. During periods of intense psychological stress, the body releases norepinephrine at levels shown in research to rapidly deplete melanocyte stem cell populations. A landmark 2020 Harvard study published in Nature demonstrated this mechanism directly, showing that stress-related norepinephrine release can cause measurable and lasting damage to these stem cells within hair follicles. This helps explain why graying often seems to accelerate during emotionally or physically stressful periods. The biological link is direct, not coincidental. Nutrition supports the follicle environment, but chronic stress can override those benefits if it remains unmanaged. Both need attention for the system to function optimally. From here, the focus becomes action. Start today, not later. Take a clear photo of your hair, especially the areas where gray is most visible, and save it with the date. This becomes your reference point for a 90-day comparison because gradual changes are difficult to notice without visual tracking. Next, identify which of the 6 foods you are currently not eating at all. That gap matters more than occasional consumption. For most modern diets, blackstrap molasses and chickpeas are often the most commonly missing. Begin with those. It's also worth reviewing recent blood work, specifically looking at vitamin B12, ferritin, vitamin D, and copper levels. If you don't have recent results, consider requesting them during your next checkup. Even normal low-range B12 levels, anything below about 400 pmol/Rl, can still be suboptimal for melanocyte function and worth discussing with a healthcare provider. Certain medications, including proton pump inhibitors, metformin, and long-term antacids, are known to reduce B12 levels over time. This isn't a reason to stop treatment, but it is a reason to monitor levels more closely and consider supplementation under medical supervision. Another simple but important adjustment is timing your coffee and tea intake. Consuming them alongside meals can reduce iron and copper absorption due to tannins. Separating them from food by 60 to 90 minutes helps preserve mineral uptake without requiring any major lifestyle change. None of these steps are complicated, but they do require consistency and awareness. The difference between understanding this information and applying it is what ultimately determines the outcome. What this all comes down to is a shift in perspective. Hair color is not only dictated by age or genetics, it reflects whether melanocytes are receiving the raw materials they need, copper, selenium, tyrosine, folate, vitamin D, and more, to function properly. When those inputs are consistently restored through targeted nutrition and healthier habits, melanocytes that were underperforming can begin operating closer to their intended capacity. That is not speculation. It is basic biochemistry.